Are you ready to unleash your full potential and become unstoppable in your success and leadership?
Welcome to the Unleashed and Unstoppable podcast, where we provide powerful insights and strategies for coaches, corporate leaders, and entrepreneurs. I'm Alexanne Carter.
And I'm Carol Register, and we're certified master neurocoaches who are passionate about helping you overcome your limiting beliefs and optimize your performance.
Each week, we'll be sharing actionable tips and strategies using neuroscience, from interviews with industry experts to solo episodes to help you lead a life of power, purpose, and possibility on your own terms.
Join our community of like-minded individuals. Hit subscribe now, and let's be unleashed and unstoppable together.
You failed to plan, or you plan to fail. This is the quote I have in my head over and over again. And it is thanks to our guest who is here with us today, who is Sarit Attwood, who is one of my dear friends and now coaches, personal fitness coaches, who I'm so excited to bring to you today to talk all about, I was going to say neurohacking your health. And there's so much, like, I don't even think Sarit realizes that there's so much neurohacking that she's actually doing with health without her probably really aware of that. And so I was so excited to bring her on today to really talk to you, high achiever, because Sarit has completely transformed my life. And I did declare that I was going to try and not get too emotional on this interview today, because as much as I have always put health first and have, I took nutrition courses in university. Andrew and I even started like an AA Fit Ventures Instagram account several years ago. Like, we are an active family. We have 2 active kids. And yet I was feeling stuck, and I was feeling like very frustrated, in fact, because there was just something, as much as I know the neuro coaching and I do the brain priming, there was still something very much missing for me. And then Sarit just showed up and appeared in my life. We happened to be in the leadership room together. And then, I heard about this PP 180, this peak performance 180. And I'm like, that sounds like it's perfect for me. And I know it's perfect for the listener here, because you're high performers and you always are looking for the peak, right? Optimizing and really being the best you can in all areas of your life. And so for my 40th birthday, I say that I gifted myself health for my 40th birthday. And in only 6 weeks, like, my life's been transformed. And it is thanks to Erin and, her wife's partner, Sarit and Erin. I always get you guys mixed up. I don't know why. Okay. and your community. So welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today. Carol says hello and wishes she was with us today, but she is with her family right now. And just take a second, Sarit, and introduce yourself to our audience and our listeners of high achieving female leaders. And then let's dive in.
Hi. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. I mean, I adore you. And I remember when you sent us that video, you're like, I'm interested. It kind of came out of nowhere, and I was very much humbled, and I was like, all right, let's go. And, getting to know your story on a deeper level, when we chatted that day, I think it was like an hour and a half conversation. And I resonated so much with what you shared. And, something that I want to share here is that a lot of times when it comes to our health and we're going through an adversity or we're running through an obstacle that seems to, just keep coming back and it never goes away, we think that there's something wrong with us. And if you're listening to this and, maybe it's something with your health, maybe it's something with your weight or with your metabolism, whatever it may be, I want you to know that first thing is you're not alone. Most people feel that way. It's just an uncomfortable conversation, really. And the second thing is that there is a way. So what I do want to share is that my mess became my message, right? And Alex, when we chatted the first time, I was telling Alex, I'm like, even though I look a certain way right now, I haven't always been that way. I've become that way. And what Erin and I do that's different is we focus on the basically mental and the habitual manipulation and really all of those unseen roadblocks that stop us from taking the action that we know we should, and really uncover all of that and focus on the one thing that's within our control. And that is how we show up, not the byproduct, but how we show up, right? And that gives us control, that gives us confidence, and that also gives us accountability for what's working and what's not working, which is super empowering, because when you can see clearly based on how you show up what's working and what's not working, it's a lot easier to change.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
yeah.
being
So
intimate with those results, right? Like really, and we know that with leadership, like the importance of really being intimate with results. And you said something there, Sarit, about like it was who you became. And that always makes you think, well, it's identity, right? When you can start to transform your identity of someone who is active and healthy. I think the big thing for me was like it was redefining that identity now with two kids. The identity I was always going back to, and I catch this myself, I catch this with clients all the time, is we're oftentimes trying to get back to where we were, like
so good.
I was like that, and it was like, no, I get to redefine now what a healthy lifestyle gets to look like now, just for not for myself, but for my two kids, and also for my husband and the people around me. And that was it was like almost that identity kind of battle inside. And when as soon as you said that becoming piece, that brought me back to them. I think it's really important for our listener to really lean into that, right? It's who you're becoming, and it's the way of being in the process. And it is that intimacy piece about really looking at what is working, what's not working. And it's taking the time to actually go there, right? Like being and looking at, because there were so many things that were working with me, and I didn't see it actually until I started working with you. I was so hard on myself. And how many of you listening today are so hard on yourself? Because we just naturally have the tendency. And then because of the negativity bias, we tend to compare ourselves to others. I mean, the other thing that you've been reminding me of the last couple of weeks is like the grace. And we talk about that all the time on the podcast as well, as like giving ourselves grace and really acknowledging ourselves for the progress, right? Progress over perfection, and being able to continue that. But it's really, we know as high performers, it's not always the default, right? So changing that default for us. And I love the way that you have built your program to really build on the building blocks, because I think what happens a lot of times with high achievers, it's like the 0 to 100, because we feel like we should. And it's not that we can't do it, but a big part of what we stand for is actually building, your life, or 10 out of 10 life, without burning out in the process. And I'm sure you have coached and mentored many, many, and I know you've worked with a lot of athletes as well, supporting them through that, so they're not experiencing the whole, that whole roller coaster. Like they build sustainability. I mean, that's part of your mission, right? I've got it right here. Your mission is to transform the weight loss industry by optimizing the lives of millions through the same fitness, nutrition, and lifestyle habits that transform yours in a way that is fun, simple, and sustainable. Like we need more of that, right?
Yeah. So can we actually talk about identity?
Yeah.
When people see Erin and I, they think we're fitness coaches, but what we do is really the deeper work on top of body mechanics. So like as you talked about identity, I was taking myself back through my own journey. So can I just give a little bit of context?
Yeah.
So for a bigger portion of my life, I actually struggled with my weight, believe it or not. Growing up, I was an overweight child. I'm very short by nature. I'm 5'1". And I'm stocky, right? So, there's like less place.
Just like me. I'm only 5'2". So
you are?
Yeah.
Well, we haven't yet met in person. I believe we will in a couple of months. And it's like when you have a big personality, like you seem so much taller on Zoom than 5'2". And it's funny because when people see me for the first time, they're like, really? You're that small? So it's pretty funny. But what I wanted to share is, so I grew up in a Jewish home, right? Like typical, Jewish mom. It's like food is a form of love. When you're happy, you eat. When you're sad, you eat. And then before you know it, it's Shabbat every single week, which is kind of like a Jewish Thanksgiving, except it happens on a weekly basis, not on an annual basis. So I also used to have really, really bad asthma. I used to get rushed to the hospital multiple times a year. That's actually something that most people don't know. And yeah, I mean, like the weight just creeped up, and it really it touched me because when I was a young kid, it's like I always knew that I was meant for something bigger, like on the inside, but I didn't feel that way. As a matter of fact, I had a lot of childhood trauma with being rejected, being an outcast because of how I looked. So going to middle school, I'm like, no longer do I want to be the girl who never gets invited. No longer do I want to be the girl that never gets kissed when it's a birthday party and it's spin the bottle. So I was like, all right, I want to change. So what did I choose to do? I wanted to change my outside. Right. And before I knew it, at the age of 12, that led to a decade long of it went from I lost a little bit of weight to I took myself because I have an all or nothing mentality, right? Because I'm a high achiever. So, I created a competition with taking away food for myself, where that led a couple months later. Went to anorexia, bulimia, and then a decade long of disordered eating patterns. So when I say you name it, I've been through it. I have. And yeah, it happened that way for an entire, like more than a decade until 3 weeks after I graduated college. One day my dad got a heart attack. And that was the day that changed my life when I got the call from my mom, because my dad was invincible. He was my rock. He's the person that I leaned on. And all of a sudden, I don't know if he's going to make it. So like it was the worst day of my life, the scariest day of my life. I was in the US. I was born and raised in Israel. I bought a one-way ticket to Israel because I wasn't sure if he was going to make it. He was working overseas, so they flew him on a medical plane. It was just traumatic, catastrophic, and it's a miracle that he's here with us today. And I do believe that everything in life happens on purpose, but I'll never forget the sight of seeing him getting reeled into the hospital. It's like when you see someone whose life has been taken away from them. And at any given point in time, it might be his last breath. Just the fear, the frustration, the sadness, the what's going to happen with him, what's going to happen with my mom, what's going to happen with my brother and I. And I was the oldest child, so I was preparing. I'm like, if shit's going to happen, like I'm going to be in charge. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was very scary. And I remember looking at him, and then all of a sudden everything became a blur. And that's when I met my other self. And I believe these are the moments where like it's really our true awakening moments. And I don't remember much from that night, but what I do remember is that I was telling myself, I'm like, you're just like your dad, except he's 32 years ahead of you. And if something's not going to change right now, 32 years from now, you're going to be in that same position. And I asked myself, is this how you want it to end? So I saw the end and I saw what it looked like. And I'm like, is this how you want your marriage to end? Is this how you want your relationship with your kids to end? Is this how you want your life to end? And I said, no. And I said, but I don't know what to do. Because I've been trying and doing everything, taking weight loss pills, starving myself, taking laxatives, like doing crazy cardio for hours on end and all of that. So that night I walked home from the hospital. Oh my God, I don't know what it looks like, but show me the way and I'll follow. And if I do happen to be successful, I'm going to spend the rest of my life helping others, or either like my dad or like myself, like really wanting to get their body in place, but just, stopping and going. And truly for responsible people who want to make a better life for themselves and their family to be able to simply put themselves and make their health a priority so that they stay out of the hospital bed, because we now live in a sick care society model. You know what I mean? So really that's why I do what I do. In 6 months, like I went from having struggled with my weight to my whole body completely changing. And first time ever, had a six pack, felt so great, like a level of just inner peace and confidence with myself that I never felt before. And I'm like, man, I really wish that on everyone because I've been through all steps of it. But one of the reasons why I wanted to share this with you is not just to give you guys context, but you talked about identity. And when it comes to identity, there's three things to consider: experiences, habits, and beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And most people choose to let go of an identity that they've known after an extremely traumatic experience. That's
Mm-hmm.
why you hear about a lot of people, I almost died, and all of a sudden, like, like they had an awakening moment. For me, it's like I saw someone who was like my mirror. And I believe that it doesn't have to be that way for you. And that's why we always put together for like our people experiences. Why? To help them to create a new identity. Because here's the thing. We all know, as you're listening to this, I'm gonna ask you a pop quiz question. Okay, so that you can really see that you understand the mechanics. Which lunch would you choose that would be better for you? Lunch A is I'm gonna give you chicken thighs, sweet potatoes, and broccoli, and don't go I'm vegan on me right now. Okay, just take it as a general concept. Okay. Um, versus option B, pepperoni pizza. Alex, which is a better option, like health wise, body
Well,
wise?
first option A.
Right, right. So I believe that yes, there's a lot of specifics where we have not been taught, but in general, where most of society is at, like, you know, 78% of Americans are morbidly obese. Childhood diabetes is on the rise and has grown by 500% over the last decade. 80% of Americans over the age of 18 are relying on at least one medication to keep them alive. That's not because they're missing some details. It's not. It's because the identity conversation and then, the habit conversation, we pick up what our parents have taught us for better or for worse, right? So, and also this is one of the reasons why a lot of times when I work with leaders and athletes, they show up better than, let's say someone who's not a leader or an athlete in general. And that's not always the case, but I'll tell you why. Because they have a different identity. Someone who's been 300 pounds, there is a lot to erase.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it is very much possible. Like there's someone actually a couple of people in our program who started there. So it is very much possible. It doesn't matter where you're at right now. Just my message to you is let go of what has been.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter like whether or not your family's got health issues and diabetes runs in your family and obesity runs in your family. Trust me, you see my cousins, you're like, dude, there's no way you guys are related. They're all overweight, all of them. But what's different is habits, right? So I chose a new identity. Now, for me, it took catastrophic event. It doesn't have to be that way for you. It could be another event. By the way, that's one of the reasons why in this program it leads to an event. Why? Another new identity boost, right? And then it requires habit manipulation because we can know everything inside here, but ultimately we are what we repeatedly do. And our brain is always going to follow the path of least resistance. Yeah. Like right now, I will bet you that for Alex, it's harder to wake up in the morning and not work out than it is to wake up and it's harder for her to wake up in the morning and not work out than it was like, 3 months ago? Like I'll probably have to fight you right now because it's so ingrained in you. You know what I mean? Because habits are like, we are a byproduct of our habits, right? So, and the other thing about habits and, why the way that we set up our programs or our events or whatever, it's by focusing on what's within your control. And the reason being is because when you focus on what's within your control and then you start to see momentum, what it creates is a heightened level of belief. And we will never be able to accomplish higher than what we believe we can accomplish. That's just the reality of it. So all these three elements go into identity. And I just wanted to touch on that because I feel like it's huge, because maybe you're listening to it and you're like, man, I've been busting my ass, working out 2 hours every single day. I've been eating clean for 30 days and like nothing has changed. In fact, maybe things are getting worse. Why is that? I would like, like, what's your identity conversation? How are you really seeing yourself as? So, yeah.
Well, and I think even when we started, like I kept finding myself going, like kind of reversing, because it's just the subconscious. We naturally have the tendency to look in the past because that's what we know, right? That's what's familiar to our brain. Our brain only knows what we've seen in the past. I realized what my block was, having this identity of being, fit mom with two kids. And it was like, and I wasn't doing the work there. I wasn't going there for the work. And what came up was all the other beliefs around, well, time and life is busy, right? Because, again, you got two little ones, multiple business, all of these things. And it was just like, that was fascinating to see the default. And that's, we say it's often on the podcast too, like new level, new devil. This is the first, like, as much as I was, doing the things, even with the new kids, like my story was, I'm having a really hard time getting this to work like it did before. What did I say? I'm having a hard time getting this to work like it did before. I was comparing to the past versus making a commitment to like, okay, what does this actually look like moving forward, and working through that and being mindful of that. I'm not, it's not been all sunshines and roses. I wish I could say that there's been some challenges, but that's the power of the community that you've built, the accountability, and the way that my experiences with PP180, I know I haven't experienced much of the other programs, but even with this, and I just feel like this is the program for high achievers, because this is what takes you to really get to the next level and support you, the sustainability piece. My family lifestyle is completely shifted. I was thinking about that this morning. So I made, now I'm meal prepping. I used to meal prep, but then it was like, well, how do I meal prep with kids? So now I meal prep with my daughter. Like, it's little things. And I just kept finding my brain blocking me, and my brain's doing its job. Right? That's it. That's what it's doing. But it was frustrating because I'm a neuro coach. I know it's like, right. And again, what was the story? I know better. Like, how many are you listening to are probably saying similar things to you? Right. And that's where the power of a support system and a coach and someone to be able to, we see your blind spots. We can't see our blind spots. Right. And so, and what I love about Sarit is like, she practices what she preaches. And I think I shared this with you earlier. Like I've, as much as I've been in other communities, I've never really been with somebody who is not just, telling you what to do. They're literally in it with you and sharing like what they're up against. And so that, just that authenticity and that vulnerability is huge, right? Because it's so easy to look on the outside. I'm in Zoom rooms with Sarit all the time, and I'm admiring her shoulders all the time. Like, I'm seeing them like, I'm waiting to have shoulders like her, right? We naturally do it. But what I love is that it's not that this divide, like Sarit's over here and I'm over here. Like, no, like we're in this together. And I think that is just so powerful to be able to support with really helping, especially on those more challenging, difficult moments. Like, to be honest, let's say 75% of what we're actually doing in PP180, I'm already doing automatically, but there's still that 25%. And that 25% is what's going to help me get over the hump of now creating this consistency and sustainability. Because I'd love to know for you, Sarit, like, what are some of the things with your clients that you notice that they come up against, and why, like, on what you've learned on your journey to support in getting over those humps, so it really does become sustainability in what you are, coaching and mentoring into with your programs.
Yeah. So I would love to share all of that. And before that, I want to plug in the challenge real quick, because in the challenge, we're literally so we have a challenge that's coming up. It's called the Stay on Track Challenge. And the intention is really what the name says, to help the person who's hit life obstacles and has fallen off track to be able to stay on track no matter what life obstacle happens, whether it's oh, I'm not motivated because I mean you live in Canada, so it gets super cold by you guys because it's really cold outside and it's just that time of the year, right? Or whether it's because, you know, like women, guess what? Like our hormones are like different all the time, and it's been designed to be that way. But how do we still follow through with our intentions without letting our emotions get in the way every time they come up? Our emotions is what makes us human. But if we let our emotions drive our action every single time, guess what? It's not going to be very, very helpful, right? And like how to overcome the subconscious self-sabotage stories and scripts that we've created that we aren't even aware that are leading us to self-sabotage, right? Or whether it's a time thing or, you know, the unseen things that are never discovered. So some of the things that I hear clients or people who first come to our community struggle with, time is a huge thing, especially nowadays, because I mean, look, the reality is that right now our attention span is lower than that of a goldfish. Like it's crazy. We're more intelligent as a species than we've ever been, but our attention span is literally like the dumbest it's ever been. Why? Because like there is, you know, Alex, you probably had 100 notifications go off, you know, already. That's why when I do Zooms, like my phone is always off and my notifications are always off as well, because otherwise I'm like, especially because of, you know, like we're both promoters, right? So we're like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's even harder if you have that type of personality, right? So time is a huge thing. And, you know, time is really the great equalizer because we all have the same amount of time. And if I can, so can you. And if you find yourself telling yourself the story of time is an issue for me, I can tell you that time is not actually an issue for you. It's either one of three things. It's either that you have not built life systems that are sustainable to help you with where you're at so that you can, you know, turn self-care and your health into a habit. That's thing number one. Two, maybe it's that you're just not committed enough. Sometimes we don't realize how when we're not committed to something, we're gonna find like a limitation or a block before it even shows up, right? So and it comes up in different ways, right? Saying I don't have time, saying I don't have money, saying it's not the right time, saying what are some of the other things we say? Saying this is not for me or this is too hard. It's actually a commitment thing or like a fear. And the third piece is it could be a mix of both. Maybe you're kind of committed, but like you just haven't developed systems. So you're not actually committed because you don't know how to lead it. So time, that's a big thing. The other thing, obviously, motivation is like a huge hot topic, right? I mean, hashtag Motivation Monday. Guess what? There's a reason why it's got a day on Instagram and it's called Motivation Monday, because what do we know about motivation? It comes on Tuesday, but it goes away on Tuesday, right? It's unreliable. It's like soap. You go to the shower, you wash it off, it goes away, right? So motivation is not actually the driving force to success. Like ask any successful person in any area of life, Alex, whether it's with you, with coaching, with leadership, whether it's parenting. Like I'm not yet a parent, but shit, I hear every single parent like tell me that wait till you have a baby, like you'll miss sleeping again, right? So it's like we motivation is not an issue. Like no one is motivated. And if motivation is the thing that you're seeking, then you're actually seeking the wrong thing. So I'm going to plug in discipline. It's not a very sexy word, but discipline is the answer. Discipline is the only answer. Motivation is like that fantasy. It's that unreliable fantasy, but discipline is it. But discipline is the partner that you want to marry because they will stick with you through thick and thin. Motivation, you know, like as soon as you go out to dinner, they're going to go look for someone else, right? That's why Motivation Monday. I'm just giving an analogy, right? So motivation is another thing, right? And it comes up in the excuse of, I don't feel like it, I'm not motivated, or I wish I was more motivated. And, like no one's motivated. In fact, yesterday I didn't want to go to the gym, but I did anyways. Why? Because I knew how I would feel about myself if I didn't. So to me, that was a price I'm willing to pay. And then I would say those are the two main things. The other one, and really that just comes in the form of limiting belief, is really anything that blocks us from a new level of commitment. And that comes in the story of, I'm too old. If
Mm,
only I knew, like, if only I had more XYZ, or easy for you to say, right? Like we all have limiting beliefs, and these are the mental blocks that stop us beyond what is currently familiar to us. And it shows up in how we talk, it shows up in what our environment looks like, it shows up by who we surround ourselves with, and it shows up in how we treat ourselves, right? And how we treat ourselves is basically the byproduct of that is our current life, right? And our life
yeah.
today is a byproduct of the habits that we built up until now. Our habits are a byproduct of our actions, and our actions are a byproduct of our decisions. So you're right. A lot of what we do is the inner workings and wirings to really help to create the long-term consistency that is not daunting and that is sustainable in a fun way. Because if we fail to teach on that, then we can talk about the like super intricate stuff, which we do talk about that as well, but we can never lead something that we don't have a strong foundation with. So the foundation is really like training this to understand, what are our mental blocks? How do I make the accurate decisions? And really having a measurable way to see what the quality of our decisions and actions are. And that gives us a framework that allows us to see how are we showing up. And based on that, shines our level of belief. And in the process, we're creating habits. And just like that, you transform your body and it never comes back again, right? Because when the foundation is based on consistency and discipline, I'm not relying on an external source to change me.
Yeah.
I am being the catalyst regardless of what the external circumstance looks like. And I believe that that is the power. And like your audience are leaders, right? So for leaders, like every leader manages a system, right? Whether it's with your work, whether it's with your family, whether it's, like your CRM, whether it's both. And how we lead ourselves also shows up in how we lead every other system. So I
Yeah.
believe that the true power in that is not just in the physical results and the health results that we create, but really the level of responsibility, discipline, and accountability, and high in awareness with how we lead every area of our lives. So,
Well, and I always go with like, I mean, just as those that are parents out there with your children, right? Like there's the mirror neurons, and if they notice you operating and making different decisions, that's going to also overflow with them. And, it's really exciting, like for me, it's like just making little slight changes. And, sometimes I mean, I have shared like some meals don't go so well because, the kids are also getting used to certain things. And I make little changes. And there's other days where like the other day, Abby was like, oh my goodness, mommy, this is so yummy. I'm like, hey, can I record you saying that? Like she loved it. And so what's nice is luckily at this stage, because they're still little, they don't really know anything. Because I mean, I give them food. They're aware of some of the flavor changes, but generally speaking, I know that I was really nervous about that at the beginning. And at first it was challenging, but it was like what I focus on grows. I was focusing on that they wouldn't enjoy it. And guess what? They weren't enjoying it. And now I've shifted the focus of like, okay, they're really going to enjoy it and they're really enjoying some of the changes. So I'd love to talk a little bit about that, about the
yeah.
food, because I always have this one quote in my head that 80% of ads are made in kitchens because it's really not about the workouts. And I've always we've spoken about that. And I feel like a lot of times default is like it's about the workout and the movements. But you've blown my mind. Like I said, I took nutrition classes before. I have studied health. I mean, I released, was it like 25 to 30 pounds before Andrew and I got married several years ago. And so again, it's like I thought I had this knowledge, and yet what you've brought to the table is still is taking me to a whole other level. Like I feel like I've gone back to university working with you of like just having so much more awareness. And to be fair, I mean, that was several years ago. So of course, I mean, the things change as well. But I'd love to just dive in that a little bit in terms of how you took yourself on, what you've really grown to learn, and are there some maybe little foundational things that we can leave the audience with for them to just keep in mind, the next time they do go to the grocery store, when they look at the label and not be persuaded by the marketing on the front of the box or the front packaging, but to really be intimate and look at the back and to be looking for certain things. I think that's what becomes really overwhelming, is like, okay, I can look at the label, but I don't even know what I'm looking for, and there's so many different things that people say, and you're like, well, is it this I go for? Like, what do I start with? So I'd love to just share a little bit of some of the insight you shared with me so that our listener can walk away with just a couple of things in their minds to just, feel a little more educated in terms of the decisions they make when they're, out looking at their food.
Yeah. I love that. So first thing that I want to share is everything from a nutritional standpoint that we teach has it's a byproduct of Dr. Michael Pollan's book In Defense of Food, and just all of his studies, and like we have extensive nutritional background, but our intention is really to simplify what has become overcomplicated. And quite frankly, as the food industry becomes more saturated and just more advanced, things are becoming a little bit more complicated. So knowing how to look at the right things is really what makes the biggest difference. So I will totally share with your audience what are the things that I look for when, basically, let's say if someone was to throw me off a plane to Portugal, which I've never been to before, how will I guarantee that what I'm choosing is actually going to be the right thing? So I'll walk you through this in just a second. But the first thing that I want to share for your listeners to provide them with hope is, it doesn't matter what your nutrition has been like up until now, or what you've been told by your doctor about your background. What I want you to know is that your entire palate can change in a matter of 21 days. So if you're like, oh my gosh, like, I have a really hard time resisting sugar, but I'm used to really salty foods. Yeah, it could be challenging for 21 days, but after that, just watch and see what happens. And that's probably what happened with your daughters. Without them realizing, their palate probably started changing. And when it did, food started to taste different. So I share this with you before we dive into the mechanics, because know that there is a way, even if currently there's some kind of belief that's telling you, no, but not for me. Yes, for you, 21 days.
I actually want to say I can attest to that, because mine was that I'm really not a big fan of cooked veggies. And so I'm getting more veggies. So I have successfully found ways to prepare and eat not just salads and raw veggies, but some more cooked veggies through soups and things like that. So I will say that I have been very surprised some days, like, oh, okay. Actually, I ate that and I wasn't struggling with it. So I agree. I was curious about that, and I did not know that fact. So that probably answers why it's been a lot easier for me to enjoy more cooked veggies in the last little while.
Yeah. So 21 days. And when it comes to food, what you see in the front is vanity, and what you see in the back of a package, that is sanity. So I share this with you because the more advanced the food industry gets, the more you're going to see all of these health claims, right? Like 100% whole grain, keto, paleo friendly, vegan, blah, blah, blah. And it makes
GMO free, like,
right.
Noticing more labels.
Right. And it makes us think that, oh yeah, like this is better. The reality is that most of the time it is really just an added tool for them to jack up the price, because people will pay more for healthier products, right? But that's definitely not the case. So forget what you see in the front. What I look for is for one, when shopping at a grocery store, know that if it comes in a jar, if it comes in a box, or if it comes in a bag, most likely it is processed. 99% of the time it is processed. So when going to the grocery store, be cautious of where your food's coming from. Is it coming from the perimeters of the grocery store, where that's normally where, like the perishable stuff are, or is it non-perishable? Because the higher the lifespan of a food product, the more processed it is. The lower the lifespan, the less processed it is, right? So I'm going to give you like a couple quick slogans to really help your audience retain it. It's like, if a worm on the ground wouldn't eat it, then consider it processed. If a worm eats it, then great job. Like, you want to eat the shit that worms would eat. And the other thing, the other quote to remember is, if your great grandma didn't eat it, you probably shouldn't either. Why? Because when our great grandmas were alive, like, like food industrialization was still not a thing, right? Like, based on where you grew up back then, it was either, like, I came from the Middle East. So for us, it was like fish and vegetables. If you came from like the UK or maybe Canada or the United States, it was like meat and potatoes, right? Yeah. And that's why, like, if you see like the median weight of both men and women over the last 3 decades, it went up by like 40%. Why? Because we ate processed food. So our bodies want to heal. As a matter of fact, our bodies are the most incredible machine. And the thing about our bodies is that they will operate based on what raw material we give it, right? So the raw material is obviously like food, also supplements, but I don't want to talk about supplements in this because I believe that supplements are meant to supplement a diet, not to be the foundation of a diet. So if a worm eats it, you should eat it too. If a worm wouldn't, you should probably stay from it. And if your great grandma didn't eat it, then look at, like, take a double look at that. And when you do take a double look, always look at the back label and look at the ingredient list. I don't care how many calories something has. Quite frankly, I don't. I never check the calories in something, because if I have to go and look at the calories of something, 90% of the time, it's because it made some health claim in the front that's trying to distract me from what I should really focus on. But the sanity is in the ingredients, because the ingredients are going to tell me, what is this made out of? So Alex, we codify the processing of food based on a stoplight, like the colors of a stoplight, green, yellow, red. So the more processed the food is, the more it's like the stoplight, right? Red means stop, green means go ahead, yellow, it means proceed with caution. So basically what we do is we provide a heightened level of awareness. So green foods are basically foods that are like one ingredient, right? Like the lettuce that a worm would probably eat. And that's why there's pesticides on lettuce, right? Like, unless it's, like a organic farm or whatever. Like, there is no claims on it. You're not going to see any ingredients. Maybe you'll see one ingredient if it's like in a bag of like 3 or 6, you know what I mean? Meanwhile, like, if you take a look at your maybe kids' peanut butter, you'd be shocked. You'd be shocked at the things that are actually in it, which is wild, because if I was to recommend 3 foods that you should avoid, like for you and your kids and your family for the rest of your life, it would look like this. The first one is anything that has a sugar liquid in it. That being sodas, that being processed juices, that being any sugary thing that trips. That's why, Alex, when you ask me about honey, I'm like, not all honeys are created equal. You'd be surprised. And it's crazy that it's like that, but it is. So that's the first thing. The second thing is processed meats. Processed meats are full of toxins and are probably one of the biggest contributors to like cancers and chronic diseases in the country, which is wild.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is anything with artificial salt.
Would it say artificial salt? I'm not curious what that like looks like in terms of like the actual name of the ingredient.
Yeah, so I mean, MSG is a big one. Right?
Yeah.
And actually, MSG is found in Doritos. It is found in Cheetos. It is found in most chips out there, but you will never see it as MSG, which is wild. You'll see it as monosodium glutamate because no one's going to read something that long. Meanwhile, parents give it to their kids all around the world to satisfy their cravings on a daily basis. You know what I mean? So, I would like rule of thumb when it comes to salts is number one, look at the number of ingredients, right? If it has more ingredients and then you see some kind of salt, then consider it a lower quality of salt, right? But if it's like, you know, 3 ingredients and it says sea salt, like sea salt is sea salt, Himalayan salt is Himalayan salt, like that's actually got minerals. It's great. But most salts out there, like most Americans, and I'm sure Canadians at this point too, but Canadians actually still do a better job, have a really high salt consumption in their diet. And it's not because they actually love salty foods, it's because processed foods are in most of the processed salts are more in most of processed foods. So their palate just gets used to it.
Yeah.
To a certain level of salt concentration. And also, processed salt is going to be a lot more concentrated than, you know, like Himalayan salt, which is wild. I mean, same thing with when I eat an apple and when I, you know, drink a can of soda. And this is why apples and blueberries and strawberries get a bad rap. And I have women ask me all the time, like, is eating fruit bad for me? Number one, good or bad is just an opinion. But so I never say in terms of good and bad, but really my stand is everything that came from Mother Nature is never going to do you wrong because it's all intentional. Now, what man has created, that's a different conversation. So like you'll never see someone who crashed their metabolism or their hormones because they ate 3 apples a day or they binge ate on 3 apples a day. Now, meanwhile, you know, if we're talking about like a piece of apple pie, it's a different conversation, right? Like you guys, I think, have a lot of blueberries in Canada, right?
I guess sure. We get a lot. I mean, I know we purchase a lot of blueberries, so why not? Yeah, we probably do.
Yeah, but like, you know, so it's like, you know, when you go to like those blueberry farms and it's like you get big.
Oh, we got Saskatoons. We went to the Saskatoon farm actually a couple months or pre-winter. Yeah, we got a pretty big bucket. Yeah.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, like I'll never forget this. Like when we were like tourists in like United States and Canada when I was a teenager and we went to like our first blueberry farm because where I grew up, like they don't have that on trees, right? And we were like so fascinated and we each got a bucket. And I remember like we binge ate like for 2 hours while we were driving in the car because you guys have like literally like state parks for days on end and like maybe you'll see a moose or a buffalo or something. But I remember like just going deep in the blueberry bucket. And it's like, first of all, you never hear about someone who gained an insane amount of weight because, dude, like Alex, I went so hard in that blueberry bucket last night. Like, you know, like you don't hear people say that or gain weight from that. Like, yeah, it will make you super full and you will probably want to pee yourself three times per night. And will the sugar content be higher? Sure. But Mother Nature is never going to provide a sugar content that's higher in ratio than its water content in a way that's really going to throw you off, right? It is the human processing that really, shifts that. And there are benefits to food processing. I mean, that's what advanced us as humans, and that's what helped us to survive and to stay on for, like centuries longer than we would have. It's just the intention has shifted. And that's where the danger is, because now like there's the Flintstone gummies that are like vitamins for kids, but the reality is that it's all straight up processed sugar with like a little zap of vitamin C. But do you think that the vitamin C even gets absorbed in it? No. There's like zero absorption. All it does is jacks up the insulin levels. Parents think they're doing a good job. They have the right intentions. So this is where education comes into play, and this is where it's super important. But, there's more to that. So I guess when you walk through it on your own, it could be overwhelming. So the other thing that I want to share is don't try to go through it alone. Like surround yourself in a community, because for one, it's more fun. For two, you don't feel alone. For three, you'll have a higher sense of accountability. And then the other thing is, I mean, we become who we surround ourselves with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're always saying that, right? You are the sum of 5 people you spend most of your time with. So, when you're surrounded, we've got that focus, especially, for me, it was like, okay, that's what it was, a declaration. I was heading to my 40s. And like, I really want to focus more on my health. And, I declared it, and all of a sudden here was, Sarit right there. And I think that's, if this is something that you really do want to focus in on, I would invite you to come to Erin and Sarit's challenge that's taking place the first week of March to really, learn a little bit more. Take yourself on, right? Like there's no time like the present to be able to really dig a little bit deeper. Because even if you think you know it all, like I did, my mind has been blown over the last several weeks because I'm learning so much more and I'm taking myself on. In fact, it's almost like I was sharing, it's almost been easier to implement some of the things I've been learning because I already had a bit of a foundation. And then I just get to take myself on in the other areas where I know a little bit less, but I'm still walking in there as if, a mentor always said that, like, always pretend you're the dumbest person in the room, not right. So that you can really like take yourself on, be coachable, be open. And I really believe in myself. I've embodied that, and I'm excited for this challenge and what your stand, your mission. I mean, it's on my heart because as a mom with 2 younger daughters and being a master certified neuro coach, I know the power of environment. I know the power of habits. I know the power of identity, and seeing it in a different context and really digging deeper and really understanding more about our food, our nutrition, the way that our society has changed and has shifted, and just the awareness of like looking at my previous habits and the beliefs that were tied to that, right? Because as you said earlier, like you only go as far as what you believe in. And so it's really being open to that. I mean, we know in leadership that 100% is possible 100% of the time. So it's opening the brain up to believing, okay, this can change. I'm committed to the change and I'm surrendering to this change because I want to not only for myself have a better life, but also for the people that are in my life that are impacting and who are watching me on a daily basis. I think it's so easy, right? We get busy with our lives and we forget the little eyes in our homes that are watching up to us and seeing how we like the decisions we make and the actions we take and the results we create. And we have an opportunity to change the generational patterns. If maybe you didn't experience that as a child, you can change that for your children and their children, things like that. And that's where I get so excited about a lot of like all of this, and also partnering with Sarit in this because we don't know what you don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know. And so being able to be surrounded by people and who ask the questions and are in this together, I think that's what's really exciting when, especially having done other type of fitness challenges, things like that in the past, the transformation is so much higher when you are surrounded. And that's why I love how you do challenges and like events with your community, because it really does, it supports with the motivation. it
Mhm.
supports when the days that you don't feel like it.
Yeah.
And knowing that you're not the only one, that you're not the only one feeling like that, there's other people, and that you are human, that you're human, and it's okay to feel like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So good. And man, there's something else that I wanted to add to just wrap this up. Um, I don't remember. Darn.
That's okay. If it comes to your mind, we can always add it in the show notes. So, but
Okay.
speaking of the show notes, we will have the link to your challenge in the show notes to go and check that out. And I mean, it's been such an honor to have you here. I'm so excited to take a stand for our audience and our listeners on their health journey, to be able to just be mindful again of what you're putting in your body, and being open to prioritizing your health, knowing that, I mean, life is short in some ways, and I think you can go about it different ways. But if you can prioritize your health, your wellness, right, and really mindful of what's going in your body, and being able to like prioritize investing in your health, right? Like that. I think you've got something on your website, something about like you can't something about investing in health. Like you invest in your health and invest in your future, but also like it's investing in your health is a very different investment than like other things that you might invest in. Like you can't, I'm just trying to remember, it was on your website. I don't know if you remember what that was, but it was just something about like when you invest in yourself and your health, you're investing in everything that's around you. Because if
That's so,
you,
yeah.
if you feel tired or you feel sick, it impacts your productivity, right? You probably aren't going to sleep very well, and it becomes this vicious cycle versus being able to perform at the most optimal health place, which then impacts positively in all areas of your life. And so I truly believe, like, as leaders, we get to perform from that optimal space. And it really does start inside, both with our wellness and, of course, with our mindset as well. So,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, as we are wrapping up, is there any final words for our listener today for us as we stand for them in making some maybe changes in what their commitments are, or when it looks to their health and wellness, and creating those sustainable habits for their lives?
Yeah, yeah. So join the challenge. That would be a great first step for you to take. It's completely free. And what's on the other side is a completely, just different life, a better life. Now, a lot of times when things are free, it's easy to not take it seriously. So my encouragement to you is show up for it like your life depends on it. And we will do our part to make sure that we set you up for success with regards to that too. The one thing that I forgot that I remembered is, Alex, your community is a group of leaders, right? And, when you're leading an organization, when you're leading a team, when you're leading a business, there's lots of ups and downs, and it's definitely not a linear curve by any means. And at times it's a very painful experience. The rewards are great, but the pain of leadership is real. And I'll tell you, like as a leader, there is so many times where I feel defeated. I feel broken. I feel heartbroken. I just do. But, one of the things that I tell myself in the morning that I'm grateful is I'm grateful for a body that gives me confidence, strength, and inspiration for what's possible.
Hmm.
And what I wanted to lead with is how you show up for you will transform into every leadership area of your life. And the good news is that it is actually a lot simpler, because when you're leading a team, when you're leading an organization, you're leading with a feedback loop from other people with other emotions, other identities, other experiences. When it's you against you, there's a lot less of that, chatter and clutter. So yes, sometimes it's the biggest mountain to climb, which it is. But when you climb that mountain and you reach the peak, I guarantee you anything is possible. I've seen that in my life, and it's the one thing that keeps me holding strong on days when I feel weak. And more days than not, I do feel weak, but I show up anyways. Why? Because if I was able to master this, I know it's possible everywhere else. So that's what I wanted to leave you with. I hope that you found a lot of value in today's conversation, and I look to see you around.
All right, head on over right now to the show notes, get registered for the free challenge. Sorry, I was going to say next week. Wait, when this goes live, I think it actually will be next week. I know it's the first week of March. And yeah, we'll see you there. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next Thursday, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Unleashed Unstoppable podcast with your hosts, Alexandra Carter and Carol Register.
If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review, and subscribe.
That's all for this episode, Wildly Ambitious Leaders. See you next week.